What I found in his hidden drawer changed everything. I don't even know how to start this without sounding like a walking cliche, but whatever. I-24F found a love letter my boyfriend, 27M, wrote, hidden deep in one of those secret drawers in our closet. I know I shouldn't have opened it. I know. But here's the thing, it wasn't addressed to anyone. Just words. Romantic, detailed, passionate words. And the worst part, it wasn't for me. Let me rewind a bit. We've been dating for just under 2 years. Moved in together about 3 months ago after months of "Are we ready?" Conversations and a whole spreadsheet he made about splitting bills, routines, grocery schedules. That should have been my first flag. Not the spreadsheet, I'm a student. I actually appreciated that, but the coldness of it. Like we were negotiating a lease, not starting a life together. He's always been distant, not in a toxic, obviously manipulative way. More like the slow kind of distance that you can't name right away. Like when you're cold but not shivering, just never fully warm. He never yelled, never cheated that I knew of, never hit me with the classic "you're too emotional" gaslight. No, he was smarter than that. Quiet, precise, rational, but everything felt measured, even his affection, especially his affection. I'd brush it off. I'd tell myself he's just more reserved. Not everyone's love language is physical touch or emotional fireworks, right? He'd bring me coffee when I had late-night study sessions. Pick up my meds when I forgot. He remembered my mom's name. But he never made me feel like I was wanted. Not deeply, not crazily, not the way you want someone when your brain goes offline and it's all gut and fire. Which brings me to the drawer. I was just looking for the charger to my Kindle, the one I keep losing because I'm the human equivalent of a dropped lasagna. He had moved a bunch of cables into the closet, and I figured maybe he shoved it into one of the boxes there. That's when I noticed this weird, narrow drawer under the bottom shelf. You wouldn't see it unless you were sitting on the floor like I was. It didn't open easily, it kind of stuck halfway. But inside, among some old receipts and a half-used notebook, was a single folded piece of thick cream paper. Not a post-it, not a ripped-out sheet. This was intentional. And no name, just a date. March 5th, which was about 6 weeks ago. I should have stopped there. I know people say curiosity kills cats, but honestly, it just kills trust. Still, I opened it. The handwriting was his. I know because I've seen enough of his to-do lists stuck on our fridge. The letter said things like, "You still haunt me when I wake up. Your laugh has fingerprints all over my ribs. I never forgot the way you kissed me the night before you left. I think about it when I'm quiet, which is most of the time these days. If I could have made myself worthy of you, I would have built a version of myself that didn't have cracks in all the wrong places. And then, no one ever touched me like you did, not even now." I read it 3 times before it hit me. This wasn't about me. I never kissed him the night before I left anywhere. I've never even left. We've lived in the same damn zip code the entire time. I've never said the things he referenced. I've never worn the perfume he described. I've never called him by the pet name he mentioned at the end. So I just sat there on the floor, the charger long forgotten in my lap, reading words my boyfriend wrote to someone else. Or maybe for someone else. I still don't know which one is worse. And the thing is, he never sent it. At least I don't think he did. It was still here, folded up, hidden, carefully, like he wanted it close but not out, like something sacred or guilty. I didn't confront him, not yet. Maybe that makes me a coward. But the second I read that letter, a switch flipped in me. I've been watching him ever since. Like I've rewound the movie of our life together, and now I'm watching it for clues I missed the first time around. There's a softness in that letter I've never felt from him, not once. And now I can't stop wondering. Who the hell did he write that to? And why does it sound like he still loves her? I didn't sleep that night. I laid there next to him, the same way I had 100 times before, but now it felt like I was lying beside a stranger. His breathing, his calm, unconscious body, all of it felt surreal. He looked peaceful. I felt like I was about to implode. It wasn't even just the words in the letter. It was the way they felt. Like they came from a version of him I've never met. Like there's a whole other side of him that I've never been allowed to see, softer, messier, raw. The kind of side you show someone when you actually love them. I started watching him. Not in a creepy way, but like analyzing, listening harder, replaying every conversation, every time he'd gone quiet, every moment where something didn't quite add up but I brushed it off because he's just not a talker. But now I wasn't making excuses. I was gathering evidence. The next morning, I asked him about March 5th. Just casually, while we were having breakfast, I said something like, "Hey, were you home all day on the 5th? I was trying to remember if that's the day my sister called me like 5 times while I was in class." He didn't even flinch, just said, "Yeah, probably. I worked from home that day." No hesitation, no double take. But something about how fast he answered felt rehearsed. I checked his calendar later when he was in the shower. He uses Google Calendar religiously, again, one of those efficient things about him. That day was marked WFH and project deadline. Nothing suspicious. But here's the thing, I also checked our texts. We barely talked that day. Just a good morning and don't forget to eat. That's it. Which is weird because when I'm on campus all day, he usually checks in more, sends a meme, something. I know I sound crazy, I know. But once you find something like that letter, you start noticing everything. Like how he flinched slightly when I hugged him from behind later that night. Or how he locked his laptop when he got up to use the bathroom, even though he never used to. Or how I found a charger I left plugged in, unplugged and shoved behind the dresser. Was he hiding more? Was the letter just one thing I happened to find, and there's a whole iceberg underneath? That week, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he described the kiss in the letter. The night before you left. Left where? Whoever she wasn't just a random ex. He wrote about her like she was the one that got away, someone who wrecked him, someone he still aches for. And then I thought of something else. A month ago, I caught him scrolling through Instagram late at night. Normally, I wouldn't care, everyone doom scrolls, but he had this look. Not horny, not zoned out, just sad, like he was staring at a ghost. When I asked what he was looking at, he locked his phone and said, Reddit. Liar. That night, while he was asleep, I did something I'm not proud of. I opened his phone. Yes, I know, I already feel like sh*T, but if you've ever had that pit in your stomach, that sick, spinning paranoia, you know what it does to your morals. He didn't have Instagram installed, not anymore. But he had recently deleted apps, and there it was, Instagram. Deleted just 2 days ago. I reinstalled it, logged in automatically, his Face ID was still linked. I didn't even have to scroll far. He wasn't messaging anyone, there were no recent DMs. But there was one profile he had searched 4 times in the last week. Her name was Rachel. She wasn't private. Her profile was full of moody photos, grainy coffee shots, rainy windows, her with a book in her lap, sunset hair flips, captions like, "Some places stay with you, even when the people don't." And I swear to God, in one of the photos, she was wearing the exact perfume he mentioned in the letter. That's when my stomach dropped. This was her. This was the person the letter was for, the one with the haunting laugh, the one who cracked him open and apparently never left his damn head. But I'd never heard him mention a Rachel, not once. Not as a friend, not as an ex, not even in passing. Why was he writing her unsent love letters and stalking her Instagram? And why was he hiding it like it could burn our whole house down? After I found her profile, I couldn't stop looking at it. I told myself I was just trying to understand, get context, but really I was spiraling, scrolling through her life like it held the answers to my own. Her posts went back years, travel shots, artsy food, a few blurry concert videos, but one post stood out. It was from almost 2 years ago. A photo of her in a gray hoodie, standing on a bridge I actually recognized. It's a spot near the city where people go to clear their head or whatever. Her caption. Some goodbyes don't feel like endings. They feel like beginnings in reverse. The comments were mostly heart emojis and beautiful as always. But one comment, now deleted, had her reply still there. We were just different pages in the same book. Doesn't make the story less real. That was dated a week before I met him. Before our story even started. So what, was she the one he was still in love with when we first got together? Was I the rebound, the cover-up, the rational choice after the heartbreak? And the thing that really **seekhead with my head, I couldn't even hate her. She seemed real, thoughtful, smart, like someone I might have followed if I didn't know who she was to him. That made it worse, because if she wasn't a villain, then what was I? Just the person who showed up next, the placeholder. I still hadn't said anything to him. I couldn't, not yet, not until I knew more. But everything started to look different after that. Like how he always skipped certain songs when we were listening to playlists. One night, after we watched a movie and he went to shower, I checked his Spotify history. He had a playlist called Untitled. And yeah, maybe I shouldn't have gone there either, but at this point, what even are boundaries when you're being lied to? The playlist was full of sad, slow songs. Not breakup songs, exactly, more like longing. That aching, I miss you but I can't say it kind of vibe. One of the songs had the lyrics, "You live in my silence, and I die in your name." I Googled it, found out it was from some indie artist I'd never heard of. And guess what? Rachel had posted a story last month with that exact lyric written over a sunset photo. I recognized the font and everything. That's when I started to feel something shift. Not just sadness, not confusion. Anger. Not the explode and yell kind. I don't do that. But the cold, quiet anger that sits in your chest like a stone. The kind that makes you look at someone while they're brushing their teeth and think, how long have you been lying to me with those eyes? I started journaling everything, keeping track, like a case file. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly, but part of me was hoping I'd find something that made it all harmless, innocent, that he just wrote that letter as a way to move on, and he didn't mean anything by it, that maybe he had loved someone else once, but he chose me. But that's not what I found. A few days ago, I was folding laundry when I found another drawer. Yeah, another F** seeking secret compartment. This one was in the back of his desk, behind the hanging files. Like dude who designs their life like a scavenger hunt. Inside was a photo. Polaroid, faded at the edges, but not old enough to be ancient. Her again, Rachel. They were standing outside somewhere, a bar or maybe a party. He had his arm around her waist. She was kissing his cheek. He wasn't smiling at the camera. He was smiling at her. There was something handwritten on the back, in her handwriting. March 5th, let's pretend this night never ends. My hands started shaking, not from shock, not even from heartbreak. From clarity. March 5th. Same date as the letter. So it wasn't written from memory. It was written after seeing her again. That's when I knew they met up. Recently, while we were living together, while he was making oatmeal in the morning and talking about which laundry detergent smells less like chemicals, while he was reminding me to take my vitamins and pretending to be present in this life, we were building together. He was still in love with her. Worse, he saw her, in real life, while I was busting my ass at work and school and trying to hold everything together. Now I'm stuck between confronting him or digging deeper. Because something still doesn't add up. Why did she disappear? Why didn't he tell me about her at all? I had to keep digging. Later that night, when I was pretending to watch TV but was really going through his stuff again, I found the name Rebecca on his old emails. It was like a punch to the gut. Rebecca, that was her real name, the same name as my sister. I had always thought Rachel was a common name, but this felt different. I knew she wasn't close to me, but we had spent a lot of time together in the past, holidays, random outings. I recognized the voice messages from my mom's birthday party. They weren't just distant relatives. I had seen her. I had spoken to her. But something didn't click, not until the pieces of the puzzle finally fit together. I checked her Instagram again, this time scrolling through old posts more carefully. There was one from last summer, a picture of a beach trip, where she had written something cryptic. There are things you never forget, even when you try. The more I looked, the more it started to make sense. The signs were everywhere. The note on the back of the Polaroid, the hidden drawer, the way he had never mentioned her name, not once, not even when he talked about the past. But it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed something that was so obvious to everyone else? And then the worst part hit me. I looked back at the photo of Rachel. The kiss on his cheek, the smile he gave her, that wasn't just a friendly gesture. That was the look of someone who had been in love, maybe still was. I felt this burning rage rising inside me, but I kept it together. I wasn't going to confront him yet, not until I was sure. That's when I saw it, a comment on Rachel's Instagram, the post I had missed before. It was from my sister. The name was buried in the sea of comments, but there it was. Looks like you and him had a good time together. Wish I could have been there. My sister, Rebecca, why the hell had she never told me? That's when I realized something even more messed up. The way my boyfriend acted around my sister, the little looks, the tension, the moments I had brushed off as nothing. They weren't nothing. They were everything. The next few days felt like I was living in some sort of twisted nightmare. The more I thought about it, the more everything seemed like it was right in front of me, but I had been too naive to see it. I started to question everything I thought I knew about my boyfriend. The way he would talk about his past with a certain fondness when we'd have late-night conversations. I always assumed he was just sentimental, holding on to things from before we met. But what if those things weren't from the past at all? What if he was still in love with someone else? I started going over every moment I could remember from our time together, picking apart every word he'd said, every gesture that seemed off. Like the time he'd gotten overly defensive when I asked about a picture of him and Rachel that he had posted months ago. He'd brushed it off so casually, but now, looking back, I realized that the defensiveness felt more like guilt than anything else. I decided it was time. I had to confront him, but before I did, I had to understand exactly what was going on. I needed to talk to someone who could give me a clearer perspective, and that someone was my sister. I had avoided bringing up anything about Rachel to her before. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore the truth anymore, so I called her. Her voice on the phone was casual, but I could hear a little tension in it. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I got straight to the point. "Do you know who Rachel is?" I asked, trying to sound as calm as I could, even though my heart was hammering in my chest. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when she spoke again, her voice was slower, almost like she was choosing her words carefully. "Rachel, what do you mean? You mean like my old friend from college?" I froze, old friend. I pressed on. No, not your old friend. I mean the Rachel who has been texting my boyfriend, the one he never told me about. There was another long silence. Then, finally, she spoke again, her voice a little softer now. I didn't know you knew. I thought you were still unaware. Now my heart was racing, and I felt my hands shaking. What the hell is going on? I whispered, barely able to keep my composure. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything? She sighed deeply, and I could hear her shifting on the other end. I didn't think it was important. It's been over, right? Rachel and your boyfriend. They used to date a while ago, but it's nothing now. Something didn't feel right. Her words were too rehearsed, too vague. She didn't sound like she was telling me the whole truth. Why are you acting so weird about this? I demanded. Do you know something I do? Line went dead silent for what felt like an eternity before she spoke again. Look, I think you need to talk to him. It's complicated, and I don't want to get in the middle of it. Complicated? I was already in the middle of it. I felt like the ground beneath me was slowly crumbling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could my sister, my own sister, be involved in this mess? Why hadn't she said anything earlier? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let it go. I needed to confront him. I needed to know what the hell was going on before I lost my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my thoughts racing. I felt like I was going insane, trying to piece everything together, but the more I thought about it, the less I understood. My boyfriend had no idea I knew anything. He had no idea what I had uncovered, how close I was to the truth. I felt a mix of anger and betrayal building inside me, but there was still a part of me that was terrified of what I would find out. What if I was wrong? What if I was just overthinking everything? But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. When he came home the next evening, I acted like everything was normal. I didn't want him to suspect anything. I wanted him to think I was still clueless. And for the first time in a long time, I watched him closely, waiting for any sign, any hint that he was hiding something. We ate dinner together, talked about trivial things, but I could barely focus on what he was saying. All I could think about was Rachel, the letter, the photo, everything that felt wrong. Finally, when the silence between us became unbearable, I spoke. So tell me about Rachel. His eyes flickered toward me, his expression shifting slightly as if caught off guard. What do you mean? Why would you ask about her? I tried to keep my voice steady, but the anger was bubbling up. You know what I mean. You've been texting her, haven't you? I know about the letter, the photos, the way you talk about her. His face tightened, and for a second I saw something in his eyes. Something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was fear. His face went pale, and for a moment he froze. I could feel the weight of his hesitation in the air, and it made me want to scream. Why was he so scared? Why did he feel threatened? But I didn't give him the chance to respond. I couldn't. The frustration inside me was building, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. Just tell me the truth, okay? I know you've been hiding something from me. I know about Rachel, I know about the pictures, and I know about the damn letter. So stop lying to me. Just stop, I spat, my voice rising. For a second, I thought he was going to deny everything. I could see it in his eyes, the panic. But then, slowly, he let out a long breath and finally said something that sent a shiver down my spine. It's not what you think. His voice was low, defeated. I never meant for it to get this far. You have to understand, I never planned on you finding out. What the hell is going on then? I demanded, leaning forward. Who is Rachel to you, and why the hell did you write that letter to her? Was it all a lie? Were we just some game to you? He stood up suddenly, packing in front of me. His hands were shaking, and I could see that he was struggling with what to say. Finally, he stopped and turned to face me. His eyes were filled with something. Guilt, regret. I wrote that letter a long time ago, before we even met, he said quietly, the words almost as if they were dragging themselves out of him. I was in a place I shouldn't have been in emotionally. I was still holding on to things that weren't real. And then, when I met you, everything changed. You were everything I needed. I thought I was over her. I thought I was ready to move on. But when I saw her again, it was like that part of me that was still attached came rushing back. The room felt like it was closing in around me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was telling me that he was still in love with someone else, someone who had been out of his life for so long. Until now. Until me. You're telling me you've been with me, living with me while still having feelings for her? I asked, my voice cracking with disbelief. He nodded slowly, unable to look me in the eye. I'm sorry, I never wanted to hurt you. I should have told you, but I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I had been living with someone who wasn't really there, emotionally, who wasn't really mine. And that realization hit harder than any betrayal I had ever experienced. For a moment, I just sat there, not knowing what to say, not knowing how to even begin to process the mess in front of me. My mind was racing, but nothing seemed to make sense anymore. But then, just when I thought everything was falling apart, I remembered the one thing that had been nagging at me all this time, the photo. The photo with Rachel, the one that had bothered me so much. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Where is she then? Where is Rachel? Why didn't you tell me about her? He looked up, his eyes filled with something close to sorrow. She's your sister. I froze. For a split second, my mind went completely blank. My sister. I couldn't process what he was saying. I couldn't understand. My brain was fighting against the idea. I'm sorry. What? I whispered, my voice trembling. I never wanted you to know. It's not something I was proud of. But Rachel is your sister. Rebecca's my real name, but I go by Rachel for work. It's been a mess, trying to separate everything in my head. But I didn't realize how much it was affecting you. He sighed, sitting down beside me. I should have told you everything sooner, but I was afraid you wouldn't understand. My world spun. My heart stopped. Rebecca was Rachel, my sister. All this time I had thought there was something between them, something that had never really existed. But it was all just a horrible misunderstanding, a tragic mix-up. And suddenly, everything clicked. The secret letters, the strange distance between us at times, the way he acted like he was hiding something, it was all a result of a miscommunication I hadn't even considered. My sister, my Rebecca, had been Rachel this whole time. It's been a few months now, and life has slowly started to feel normal again. We broke up, obviously. The betrayal was too much to handle, even though I now understand the confusion behind it all. I still talk to my sister, Rebecca, but the whole situation has left scars. Trust doesn't come back easily, especially when the lines between family and romance blur so deeply. I can't say I'm over it. I don't think I ever will be, but I'm learning to let go of the anger. The truth always comes out, even when it's ugly. And sometimes it's better to know than to keep living in the dark. As for him, I've heard from some mutual friends that he's been trying to rebuild his life, but I'm not sure I care enough to find out more. I've learned that you can't love someone who's still holding on to the past, or someone who doesn't know how to love you completely. It's a hard lesson, but it's one I'm glad I learned before it was too late.